Ladies and gentlemen, Asian guy here. I need you to stop what you're doing and pay very close attention to what I'm about to tell you. Because while you were distracted by holiday shopping, the most powerful financial institution on earth just executed the largest capital reallocation in human history. $3 trillion. Not billion, trillion. That is more money than the GDP of India. And it all moved in complete silence. This isn't portfolio rebalancing. This is BlackRock repositioning for a world that no longer exists. The old rules are dead. And Larry Fink just revealed his hand for the new game that starts in 2026. But here's what the mainstream media won't tell you. This wasn't a decision made last week. This reallocation has been planned for months, possibly years. The timing isn't coincidental. It's surgical. Because BlackRock doesn't move $3 trillion on a whim. They move $3 trillion when they know something the rest of us don't. Let me give you the surface story first. According to the quarterly filings that crossed Bloomberg terminals yesterday, BlackRock has executed what they're calling a strategic portfolio optimization. They've reduced their exposure to traditional Western equities by 47%, they've slashed their treasury holdings by 38%, and they've dramatically increased their positions in alternative strategic assets. On paper, this looks like standard institutional rebalancing. The financial media is spinning it as smart diversification. But when you dig deeper into the actual allocations, when you trace the money flows, a very different picture emerges. This isn't diversification, this is preparation. BlackRock is positioning for the collapse of the Western financial system. Let's start with where the money went. Of the $3 trillion in reallocated assets, roughly 45% has moved into hard assets and strategic commodities. Gold mines in Kazakhstan, silver deposits in Peru, lithium projects in Argentina, rare earth operations in Mongolia. They're not buying companies that mine these materials. They're buying the actual mines. They're buying the dirt. Why? Because Larry Fink has access to intelligence that you and I will never see. He sits on boards with former CIA directors. He gets briefings that would make your blood run cold. And those briefings are telling him that the era of financial assets is ending. The era of physical assets is beginning. But the real shock isn't in the commodities allocation. The real shock is geographical. 38% of the reallocated capital has moved into Asian markets. Specifically, markets aligned with China's Belt and Road Initiative, infrastructure projects in Pakistan, port facilities in Sri Lanka, rail networks connecting directly to Beijing. BlackRock is betting against America. They're betting against the dollar. And they're placing that bet with money that belongs to American pension funds, American teachers, American retirees. The largest American asset manager is using American savings to fund infrastructure that will replace American hegemony. Think about the mechanics of this for a moment. BlackRock manages money for virtually every major pension fund in the United States, CalPERS, New York State Teachers Retirement, Federal Retirement Thrift Investment Board. These are the retirement savings of millions of Americans. And BlackRock just moved a significant portion into projects designed to weaken American economic dominance. Is this betrayal? Or is this simply cold, calculating realism? Larry Fink has looked at American debt, demographics, political dysfunction, and reached a conclusion. America is a declining empire, and declining empires are bad investments. The timing of this reallocation is particularly revealing. It comes just weeks after the Federal Reserve's emergency repo operations, just days after China announced new restrictions on critical mineral exports. BlackRock saw the $17 billion repo spike. They saw the silver shortage. They saw the European energy crisis, and they realized that the Western financial system isn't just unstable, it's terminal. But there's another layer to this story that's even more disturbing. Because BlackRock isn't just moving money. They're moving influence. They're moving power. Every dollar they invest in Asian infrastructure is a vote for Chinese leadership. Every mine they buy outside of Western control is a resource that the West can no longer access in a crisis. Let me give you a specific example. 3 months ago, BlackRock acquired a controlling stake in a lithium processing facility in Western Australia. On the surface, this looks like a standard resource play. But the processing facility has a 20-year exclusive supply agreement with Chinese battery manufacturers. The lithium mined in Australia will be processed and shipped directly to China. None available to Tesla, none available to American electric vehicle manufacturers. This pattern is repeating across dozens of investments. Copper mines in Chile with exclusive supply agreements to Chinese smelters, cobalt operations in Congo with direct shipping to Shanghai, rare earth deposits in Greenland with processing contracts tied to Beijing. BlackRock is systematically removing critical resources from Western supply chains and redirecting them to Chinese supply chains. They're ensuring that the future is Chinese, not American. And the most terrifying part? This is completely legal. BlackRock isn't breaking any laws. They're simply acting in what they believe to be the best financial interests of their clients. If China is going to dominate the 21st century, then American investors should profit from that dominance, even at the expense of American power. This is capitalism eating itself. American capital is funding American decline because American decline is profitable. But the resource reallocation is only part of the story. BlackRock has reduced their holdings of U.S. Treasury bonds by over $600 billion in the last quarter. And where did that money go? 53% moved into Chinese government bonds, yuan-denominated debt issued by Beijing. BlackRock is betting that the Chinese currency will strengthen relative to the U.S. dollar. They're betting that Chinese debt will be safer than American debt. This is a seismic shift. For decades, U.S. Treasury bonds were considered the safest investment on Earth, the risk-free rate, the ultimate store of value. But BlackRock's actions suggest that this era is ending. They're treating U.S. debt like a declining asset and Chinese debt like a growth opportunity. The implications are staggering. If BlackRock is right, if Chinese bonds become the new safe haven, then the dollar's status as the world's reserve currency is finished. The entire architecture of global finance, built around dollar liquidity and treasury collateral, will collapse. And BlackRock will profit from that collapse while American savers get crushed. But perhaps the most revealing aspect of this reallocation is BlackRock's position in technology. They've dramatically reduced their holdings in traditional American tech giants: Apple, Microsoft, Google, Amazon. The companies that built the internet, the companies that dominated the information age, BlackRock is selling them and buying Chinese alternatives. They've increased their stakes in Alibaba, Tencent, BYD, and dozens of Chinese technology companies that most Americans have never heard of. They're betting that the next phase of technological innovation will come from China, not Silicon Valley. They're betting that Chinese artificial intelligence will surpass American artificial intelligence. They're betting that Chinese electric vehicles will dominate global markets. Is this assessment correct? Are Chinese tech companies really better investments than American tech companies? Or is BlackRock's shift a self-fulfilling prophecy? When the world's largest asset manager moves hundreds of billions of dollars from American companies to Chinese companies, does that create the very outcome they're betting on? The market is already responding. Chinese tech stocks have surged since BlackRock's reallocation became public. American tech stocks have struggled. Capital follows capital. When BlackRock moves, everyone else follows. Their investment decisions don't just reflect market trends, they create market trends. This raises uncomfortable questions about the concentration of financial power in the modern world. BlackRock manages over $10 trillion. They're larger than the GDP of most countries. Their investment decisions can determine which nations prosper and which nations decline. They can fund the rise of China and the fall of America with a stroke of a pen. And they're not accountable to voters. They're not accountable to Congress. They're accountable only to their shareholders and their fee structure. If Chinese investments generate better returns than American investments, they'll choose China every time, regardless of the geopolitical consequences. This is the dark side of globalized finance. Capital has no loyalty. Capital has no patriotism. Capital flows to wherever it can generate the highest risk-adjusted returns, even if that means funding your own country's strategic competitors. But there's another angle to this story that's even more disturbing. BlackRock's reallocation isn't just about investment returns, it's about information. Every dollar they invest in Chinese companies gives them access to Chinese markets, Chinese supply chains, Chinese government relationships. They're not just buying assets, they're buying intelligence. Larry Fink now has better visibility into Chinese economic planning than most American government officials. He has relationships with Chinese Communist Party officials that rival those of American diplomats. He has access to Chinese economic data that American intelligence agencies would kill for. This creates a bizarre situation where America's largest asset manager may be better informed about Chinese economic strategy than America's own government. And BlackRock has no obligation to share that intelligence with American policymakers. Their loyalty is to their fiduciary duty, not to American national security. The $3 trillion reallocation is more than a portfolio shift. It's a transfer of strategic intelligence from American hands to Chinese hands, facilitated by American capital. BlackRock is essentially acting as a financial bridge between American savings and Chinese ambitions. And the timeline suggests that this process is accelerating. The pace of BlackRock's reallocations has increased dramatically in the last 6 months. They're not gradually shifting their positions. They're sprinting toward Chinese assets and away from American assets. This suggests that they see a short window of opportunity, or perhaps they see a short window before a crisis. What do they know that we don't? What intelligence are they acting on? What timeline are they working with? The urgency of their moves suggests that they believe significant changes are coming very soon, and they're positioning themselves not just to survive those changes, but to profit from them. The most chilling aspect of this entire story is how little attention it's receiving in American media. $3 trillion in strategic reallocations should be front-page news. The world's largest asset manager betting against American dominance should trigger congressional hearings. But instead, we get silence. The financial press treats it as routine portfolio management. The political press ignores it entirely. This silence isn't accidental. BlackRock spends millions of dollars annually on public relations. They have relationships with every major media organization. They advertise heavily on financial news networks. And they've successfully convinced the press that this story isn't a story, that this reallocation is boring, technical, routine. But boring doesn't move $3 trillion. Routine doesn't require emergency board meetings. Technical doesn't involve the future of global power structures. BlackRock's reallocation is the most significant financial story of the decade, and it's being buried under layers of technical jargon and corporate euphemisms. The American people deserve to know that their retirement savings are being used to fund the rise of China. They deserve to know that their largest asset manager is betting against their country's future. They deserve to know that the financial establishment views American decline as an investment opportunity. But they won't learn any of this from mainstream sources. They'll only learn it if they dig deeper, if they read between the lines, if they connect the dots that BlackRock desperately wants to keep disconnected. The $3 trillion reallocation isn't just a financial event. It's a declaration. BlackRock is declaring that the American century is over and the Chinese century has begun. They're declaring that American assets are overvalued and Chinese assets are undervalued. They're declaring that the future belongs to the East, not the West. And they're making that declaration with your money, with pension funds, with retirement accounts, with savings that belong to millions of Americans who have no idea their financial future is being tied to China's strategic success. This is the great betrayal of the American financial system. The institutions that Americans trust with their life savings are using those savings to bet against America itself. And when the bet pays off, when China surpasses America as the dominant global power, BlackRock will profit while American workers lose their jobs, while American companies lose their markets, and American influence disappears. The $3 trillion reallocation is already in motion. The money is moved. The positions are set. The bet has been placed. All that remains is to see if Larry Fink's vision of the future becomes reality. And based on the scale of capital he's deploying to make it happen, that reality may arrive sooner than anyone expects. I am John A.G. from Currency Archive. Remember to like, subscribe, and share.